You know, some experts believe that you need over $1 million at the age of 65 to have any sort of successful retirement. Do you have $1 million? Or do you have to bridge a gap to get you there? Do you need $1 million? What is your number? Do you have a financial plan? We're going to answer all of these questions and so much more today on Your Money, Your Wealth. Welcome, everyone. Welcome back. Joe Anderson here, certified financial planner, president of Pure Financial Advisors. And of course, to break everything down for us a little bit later, we got the big man. He's sitting right over there, Big Al Clopine. And when you look at overall retirement, there's this gap, a retirement gap, because the problem is that there's a certain dollar figure that people need to accomplish to provide the same lifestyle that they're accustomed to. But there's a gap of what they actually have and what they need. A bigger problem is that there's a gap of what they need and what they think they need. So if you look, the gap is rising. In 2015, there was a $28 trillion gap in regards to a shortfall of overall assets for retirees going into retirement to have a similar lifestyle. If I look at 2020, now it's almost 140. We have to find a bridge to get the gap covered. That's today's financial focus. When you take a look at the reality of retirement, it's a little skewed. Is that 54% of workers, they say, hey, I'm going to have to work after the age of 65. Okay, 54% of people said that. 48 or almost half of people are worried about running out of money. And then only 35% of people, they don't even have a retirement account. So if I look at the numbers, 50% of people think they're going to have to work longer. I would say the number's probably a little bit higher than this. And if only half the people are worried about running out of money, then I think there's a little mindset that they don't know how much money that they need. So what you need to start with is an overall game plan, a strategy, so you understand what you need to do. To help break everything down, let's bring in the big man, Big Al Clopine.
So how do you bridge that retirement gap? Well, first of all, you got to figure out your retirement readiness. Are you ready to retire, or are you on track based upon what age you are? And of course, part of that is determining how much you need to save. And of course, if you haven't started, you got to start saving. And if you are saving, is it enough? Do you need to do some more? Maybe you need to continue at a higher level. Then it's putting together a financial plan, because that's kind of like the roadmap. That's how you get from point A to point B, is by having a plan, and not only having that plan, but sticking with it, monitoring, adjusting as appropriate, and then finally investing for success. You can have a great plan, but if you got the wrong investments, it's just not going to work. And Joe, it is interesting how when we talk to people and they think they're okay, and we go over their numbers and they're not. Some people have plenty of money, they don't think they're okay, and they're just fine.
Right, isn't that funny? You got two spectrums here. Yeah. You got people that with plenty of cash, they don't spend a lot of money, and they're gonna be totally fine forever for retirement, but they're the ones that are a little nervous.
Yeah, exactly. So why don't we kind of give some guidelines on what people should have at certain ages?
Yeah, and then don't kill the messenger here, right? I think every time we go over slides like this, it's like, hey, I need to have that much more. But this is just a simple illustration to put you in the same, I guess, zip code. Because we see this, hey, I want to spend $50,000 a year for the rest of my life, and I'm 65, and they have $200,000 saved, right? So they need to pull $50,000 from the portfolio. It's like, okay, we'll have a good 4 years. Then, you're out of liquid assets. So to give you an idea, for people in their 20s, they're just getting started. The average balance here, it's $10,000. Then I look at, all right, well, 40s and 50s, 3 to 6 times your salaries. But then once you get to the retirement age, it's 8 to 10 times as a rule of thumb. So 8 to 10 times, again, if I use that $100,000 number, well, you need 800 to $1 million. The average balance here is 200. So you have to put a lot of different things in perspective. What is your fixed income source? How much money are you actually spending? To come up with a true plan, But I think this helps, Al, to put things into perspective, to say, you know what, I'm 60 years old, how much money have we accumulated, and am I kind of close to some of these benchmarks?
So let's talk about maybe how to get caught up, or how to be a better saver. And I think the first concept to think about is a concept called pay yourself first. In other words, invest first, pay your bills second. And the way that you generally do that well is you automate it, out of sight, out of mind. If you have a 401k or 403b, go ahead and start contributing, at least to the match. Try to work up to that maximum, $19,500 or $26,000 if you're over 50. And then if you're not there, and most people aren't, add to it every year. You know, maybe even, Joe, just like 1% per year till you get to a level where you're saving a good amount.
Right, pay yourself first. Put that money away. It's out of sight, out of mind. And guess what? You will learn to live in your means with everything else. You know, because people are getting furloughed, people are getting laid off and things like that, and it's a tough time out there, and I get that. But we're resilient people. But if you don't save, if you don't put yourself first, right, then everything else kind of, well, you know what, we got some extra cash, we'll buy this, we'll buy that, whatever. The money seems to go, right?
Well, it does, and that's the whole concept. If you allocate money to your retirement first, it seems to happen, right?
Yeah.
If you wait till the end of the month and haven't done it, usually there's not much left.
There's nothing left.
But a lot of people, Joe, feel like, well, there's just not that much more money to save. How can I possibly do it? And here's a couple of thoughts, right? If you get a raise each year, allocate some of that raise to savings, right? If you get a bonus, allocate some of that to, you know, to the savings, or inheritance, or anything like that, Joe. I mean, you have sources of capital over your lifetime, and it's really easy when you get a raise to increase your lifestyle to the same level. And we're saying, yeah, you can increase your lifestyle, but maybe have some of it go towards savings.
But the problem is, it's called lifestyle creep.
Yes,
right?
That's right.
You're getting these raises and raises and raises and raises, and all of a sudden, guess what? You move into the nicer house, you buy the nicer car, you do. I don't know, I read this. Robert De Niro, right? He has to work. He's 75 years old, and he's broke, right? He's broke. He has to find another movie, right? It's like, what are you doing? Because well, you know what? Oh, I'm only making $8 million a year. It's like, well, $8 million is a ton of cash, but right, the lifestyle creep gets so high. So pay yourself first. When you get those bonuses, inheritance and things like that, just sock it away, and then you'll forget about it and then move forward.
Yeah, and then I think, you know, if you can make yourself more valuable at work and have a little extra income or raises that way, or maybe it's a side gig. Maybe you can do some consulting or tutoring. Or, Joe, how about dog walking?
Yeah, that's
right?
that's your next job,
I'm
brother.
Ready. Yeah,
that's your next job. Oh, you know, we try to make light of this, but it's a serious matter. I think a lot of individuals are approaching retirement not necessarily prepared, not because, you know, they don't want to be prepared, because they don't necessarily have the tools in place. Go to Your Money or Wealth, click on our free guide. It's a retirement guide to help you guide yourself through retirement. You don't necessarily need to hire an advisor, a broker, a banker to help you with this, as long as you have the right information in your hands. What we've tried to do is put together a full guide to walk you through the steps for a successful retirement. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on that special guide. That's our gift to you, to the path of successful retirement. We got to take a short break. When we get back, we got Matt Balderston. He's a senior financial planner at Pure Financial Advisors, a certified financial planner, been in the business for a very long time. He's going to break down the essence of a financial plan. Then, when we get done with that, we got a lot more exciting stuff to go. So we're just getting started, folks. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the show, folks. Show's called Your Money or Wealth. Joe Anderson in Big Al, hanging out, talking about bridging the gap to your overall retirement. Stick around this segment. We got Matt Balderston. He's a senior financial advisor at Pure Financial Advisors, certified financial planner. So stick around for that. But before we get to him, let's see how you did on the true-false question.
In down markets, you should continue to contribute to your 401k. Joe, true or false? I know it's a tough one.
True. You want to continue to save as much as possible. But I think the reason why we put this in there is when markets do go bad and you see balances of 401k go down, people stop saving. They're like, well, why do I want to take good money after bad if I'm only going to lose it? And we have to change the mindset a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because it's easy to invest when the market's going up. We love it, right? It feels like we're making more money, but it's actually even better to invest while markets are down, because that means you're buying your investments cheaper and will make more money in the future. It's actually good to invest at all times, so keep investing, good markets and bad.
Well, again, I think even more importantly, Al, is that the sooner that people can save, the better. Right? And then just put it on autopilot and forget about it. This is a very cool chart here. You know, I helped my sister when she first got her job as a nurse, and I ran something similar to this. I said, you know, as soon as you get your first paycheck, save a couple of bucks, because if you wait 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 years, you're going to have to save so much more money. Marley starts to save at age 35. His sister starts to save at age 45. Right? So let's say they start at $7,000 per year. They have close to $700,000 at retirement. Beatrix, right, she waited. She was procrastinating. Oh, there's other things that I want to spend my money on, whatever. But now she wants to catch up. She needs to save almost double. She does save over double, $15,000 per year, and she still has less money. So the sooner that you can start saving, the better.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, we all know sooner is better. But I think, Joe, in a lot of cases, people, you know, they come to us and they're age 50 and they haven't done anything. And we would tell you, start. If you're 65 and haven't done anything, start. It's never too late to put yourself in a better position.
Absolutely. And I think the starting point is just developing a foundation, a financial plan, some simple things that we can all do. And let's bring in Matt Balderston to kind of walk you through some steps that all of us should be taking in regards to putting together a solid financial plan.
Matt, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So you and I, over the last decade or more, have met with a lot of people. Very few people actually have a written financial plan. And why would you say, why is it important to have a plan virtually at any age?
Well, really, you know, there's a famous quote that says, you know, whatever is measured is done. It's a lot easier to accomplish your goals if you actually have something written down and gives you guidelines of what you need to do to accomplish it.
It's almost like driving somewhere without a map, right? You kind of need to know where you're going.
Yep.
But let's talk about what should go into a financial plan. So, I mean, starting with your goals. So what do we need to be thinking about to do a financial plan?
Well, the first step is obviously, yes, to determine what your goals are, whether they be retirement, buying a house, putting your kids through college. That's the critical first step. Then the next thing you need to do is, you know, gather data. You know, pull all your documents together: bank statements, investment statements, estate plan documents, mortgage statements, etc. And then you put all those together to actually create your plan. And so that is actually laying out, putting that data into spreadsheets or software, however you're going to do it, so that you can figure out what steps you need to take. Once the steps are determined, you need to implement it. And then finally, and this is what I consider the most important step, you have to monitor and adjust to it as life goes on.
Well, let me go back just a second, because we can say create your financial plan on a spreadsheet, but what does that mean?
Ideally, I mean, if you know, for example, that you need a certain amount of money to put as down payment on a home, you know, figuring that out, you know, starting with the end first, you can figure out how much you need to save. You can figure out what kind of growth rate you need on that money potentially to reach that goal in whatever period of time you're trying to target.
Now, would people use a spreadsheet like Excel, or is there software they could get, or what would you suggest?
You know, there are calculators out there. Most financial websites will provide that. Certainly working with a financial planner is a great way to go. They tend to have much more sophisticated software that can help pull all of the different components of a plan together instead of just one thing at a time.
You create this plan, right? And then, of course, implement it. You want to make sure you implement it.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. One of the most important things after that is to make sure that you're monitoring it, right? To make sure you're staying on track. So why don't you address some tips there?
Right. So obviously, given where we are right now, a lot of financial plans have been derailed or postponed or certainly changed from where they were 4 months ago. And so it's important to realize, you know, do you need to save more if things, you know, have fallen behind? Look for silver linings and opportunities in an environment like this. You know, is it a good time to do Roth conversions because maybe you have less income this year? You know, that kind of thing. All of that can come from monitoring and, you know, paying attention to where your plan's going.
The real value is ongoing, adjusting as necessary, and making sure that you're kind of sticking to the plan.
That's absolutely true, and that's what we see a lot, and really paying attention to that does determine the success or failure often of a plan. Even if you get there's a lot of positive things that can happen. If you get a new job, can you retire earlier? Do you need, can you afford to save more to get that pulled in a bit? Can you take Social Security later? Again, the Roth conversion option is always on the table. I know you guys talk about that all the time. So making sure you don't miss those opportunities or take advantage of the really good ones when they present themselves is all about looking every year at what's going on, hopefully even more frequently.
Okay, so you built a good plan. Let's just say you're monitoring and something goes wrong. What about Plan B? What do you have to think about there?
Right, another great example going on today. So Plan B, the simplest thing to think about is just making sure you have enough cash reserve to get you 3-6 months of normal expenses. Most major Plan Bs are covered by insurance, whether that be life insurance, long-term care insurance, homeowners, auto, umbrella, all that kind of thing. But then finally, there's, if you think about a Plan B tends to mean it's not what you want to have happen, but knowing that it's there in the worst case. So a lot of people, they'll sell a home, a rental property, or do a reverse mortgage in the extreme cases. And I've actually seen that happen many times, and it solves all the financial problems. If you can't live in a home anymore, for example, knowing that that's an option just takes some of the anxiety off of the direction you're going.
Well, I think that's good advice, Matt. Thank you so much for coming today. And we're going to set up our plans and have a Plan B, and we're going to monitor, and we're going to be in good shape.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Hey, really good stuff, guys. Thanks, Matt Balderston, for joining Your Money, Your Wealth this week. Hey, we got a special gift. We got a DIY retirement guide. Let's put your financial plan in place. If you want to do it yourself, hire a professional. Any way that you want to go, we can give you the guide that you need to make sure that you can secure your overall retirement, bridge the gap, and get yourself set up. DIY Retirement Guide. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com and click on it. It's our gift to you. We got to take another break. We'll be back in just a second. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Hey, welcome back to the show, folks. Show's called Your Money, Your Wealth. Joe Anderson here, Big Al, Clopine over there. We're talking about retirement, trying to bridge that gap to make sure all of us have a successful retirement. We got Ask the Experts coming up pretty soon, but before we do any of that, let's see how you did on the true-false question.
The best way to determine your stock versus bond allocation is 100 minus your age rule of thumb. Joe, true or false?
To me, this is probably the stupidest thing that I've ever heard in the financial planning
I agree
world.
with you.
The rule of 100 is saying, okay, well, let's say I'm 45 years of age. You take your age minus 100 or 100 minus your age, and then that's going to tell you how much money that you have in stocks versus bonds. So at age 65 minus 100, 65. So 35% of your overall allocation should be subject to risk, and the other should be safe money. Don't do this. If someone is pitching you this, this is such elementary BS. You want to make sure that you have a portfolio that's very specific to your cash flow needs. Your age has some portion of the overall equation, but Al and I, we have clients that are in their 80s and 90s where 100% of their assets are going to grandchildren. Right, so they have if we did the rule of 100 at 80, their grandchildren's portfolio would be 100% bond, 80% bonds. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, you have to be a little smarter than this rule of thumb. And in fact, at one point they said, well, since this doesn't really work anymore, let's take 120 minus your age. That still doesn't work. It's your own situation. Figure out what your goals are, what rate of return that you need based upon your goals, what you're trying to accomplish, and then you work backwards to try to figure out what investments are going to make sense for you to generate that rate of return. And generally, we recommend you have the safest portfolio possible to earn that rate of return. Why take more risk than you need to take? So, Joe, I think there's a few investment tenets that maybe we might suggest here.
But here, once you start getting to your investment strategy and philosophy, it's really what determine your exposure to risk. What target rate of return do you truly need to generate on the overall assets? Be globally diversified, right? You want to make sure that you have assets across the globe. And then just try to manage what you can. Low-cost funds. If I'm looking at, I'm spending 2% in my overall investment strategy. Well, that's 2% that could be going into your pocket. So make sure that you manage your risk appropriately, looking at tax exposure. And then finally, it's just changing and adjusting this over time.
The stock market goes up, it goes down, it trends up over the long term. But people have a tendency to change their investment strategy based upon the economy, and that's exactly the opposite. You want to keep your investment strategy according to your plan. Change it when there's a change in your plan. Like, for example, you want to retire earlier. Maybe it means you'll change it at that point, but not because the economy is good or bad.
Such a good point, Al. Let's switch gears here a little bit. Let's go to Ask the Experts. Let's see if we can find some experts first for you to ask them.
So this is from Tom in Scripps Ranch. I'm getting married this year. My fiance wants to convert a large portion of her traditional IRA to a Roth before we get married. Will we be taxed at our lower income rate or at mine? And interestingly enough, on this one, it depends upon your marital status on December 31st. So Tom, if I'm reading your question right, if you're going to be married this year, it's going to be at your joint rate, right? And if you would like to have it be taxed at her rate, you'd have to wait till January next year to get married. And I had that suggestion to a client years ago, and I got in trouble for that. But.
You know what, Tom, have her convert, have her pay the tax, get married, and then be the beneficiary.
Right?
Yeah, you want to make sure that you understand tax rates because mistakes happen. If you're married, you're going to double the overall rates, right? I think the top of the 12% as a single person is $40,000. For a married couple, it's $80,000, and then the top of the 22, it's $170 versus $70, things like that. So they double. So you could do a larger conversion and pay lower tax if you're married, but it all depends on what's Tom's income, what's the fiance's income.
Right.
Maybe she has low income and he has super high income, and you do the conversion, it's going to blow it up.
Correct.
Or maybe she has super high income, Tom doesn't have any income, then they get. So it's just making sure that you understand what tax bracket that you're in as a married couple and as a single couple to make sure that you really understand what tax bracket that you're going to be in.
Yeah, and I think it's the most important thing is it's your marital status at December 31st determines how you're going to file for that prior tax year.
So I'm single all year. I get married December 31st. That next year when I file for 2020, it will be as a married couple.
You're filing married.
Got it. Hopefully that's not going to... Go ahead. Ask the next question.
All right, next question. I want to retire early, but I will need to have some income in retirement outside of my retirement funds. Is investing in rental properties a good way to make sure that I have money coming in? Sylvia from Solana Beach.
Well, ask the expert. I mean, Al, you've been a real estate investor for, what, 40 years?
Yeah, almost, over 30. Yeah, and I would say, Sylvia, being in Solana Beach, which is part of San Diego County, it's very hard to get a good cash flow by owning rental properties in this area. The reason is because the high cost of property here the rents don't keep pace with that high cost of property. So when you put it all together, a break-even cash flow to where your income and your expenses are the same is actually even hard to achieve. In many cases, you have a negative cash flow. So I wouldn't be investing here for that. I've got another point for you, though. Based upon your question, I'm assuming that you probably have not invested in rental properties before. Now, I love rental properties. I've owned them for many years, but just realize there's a lot to it. It's like a business. Things are going to go wrong. You're going to have tenants calling you at strange hours. You're going to have to repair the roof when you didn't expect to. So just be aware that if you're okay to have a business in retirement, great. But Joe, there really is a lot to rentals.
Yeah, without quite. I mean, it's a business, right? Yeah. It's absolutely a business.
My second rental, I had my tenant park their motorcycle on the new carpet in the living room, and I learned a big lesson that way.
Yeah, and you also have to be careful too of what tax bracket people are in to determine, because they think real estate's such a tax safe haven, but the write-offs tend to dissipate depending on the income as well.
Correct.
So just make sure that you know the ABCs of real estate investing. I think we did a show on that. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com. I think we probably have a white paper on investing in real estate. So, hey, let's wrap this show up. Let's talk about the things that we need to do. The takeaways. First of all, you got to start saving. Save as soon as fast as you can. If you have kids, you have grandkids, get them excited to start saving some money. Right? Then you got to develop a plan. What is the overall strategy? Now I'm throwing money, but making sure that you're throwing money at the right place, right? And then you're looking at, okay, well, now I have a strategy in place. How do I invest all of this? So they're just simple, systematic things that you can potentially do to have an awesome retirement. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com, click on that special offer this week. It's a retirement guide to help you do this on your own if you want to. You don't necessarily need to hire an advisor or broker to help you with this. I think you would get there quicker if you did, but that's a pretty biased statement from me. That is an advisor. Do what you got to do, but start today. That's all we got for you today, folks. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. Go to yourmoneyyourwealth.com again to get all the goodies that we have for you. For Big Al Clopine, I'm Joe Anderson. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you next week.